Greetings, adventurers, and welcome back to the Den of the Drake. Other dragons hoard gold, while I hoard internet cringe. Often people like to divide D&D players into two camps. You can either be a player, or you can be a DM. As if they are two entities preparing to clash like Chris Pratt's voice coming out of a beloved character like Mario. But in reality, these two entities are supposed to work together to achieve a common goal. What is that goal? Well, for most people it's to have fun, but really it's up to anyone's imagination what you can achieve with the power of friendship. As a DM, you want to play your cards somewhat close to your chest to let the players uncover interesting pieces about the world that you're crafting. But my brother in Christ, you gotta give them something to go off of. Keeping the players in the dark about a secret villain is one thing. Keeping them in the dark about their own characters is something else entirely. That's like proposing to your wife, but instead of getting down on one knee, you hand her a plastic shovel and tell her that the ring is buried in the backyard. It's a cool idea in your head, but it's not going to be worth the time or effort, and whatever might have been beautiful about the moment is ruined by the fact that you're kind of an idiot. The story I have for you today stars a DM who refuses to give her players any insight into anything, only to turn around and get upset when her players have the audacity to not be having fun. Now, without any further delay, let's go ahead and dive right into the horrifying world of r/RPG-Horror-Stories. Enjoy. This week's story comes to us from Reddit user SlitheryNew and is titled Edgy DM Refuses to Let a Level 4 Party Have Character Sheets. The story takes place a few years back around 2017 when I was still in high school. I was invited, along with a group of friends of mine, to a 5th edition D&D group hosted by a friend of ours. Our group consisted of Fighter, an animal hybrid of sorts, the only one in the party keeping us alive with prior game knowledge. Warlock, a Yuan-Ti, my boyfriend at the time. Me, a centaur bard. And finally, our party's DM and the problem. Now, I had known the DM for a few years up until that point. She was a decent enough friend, but was a bit toxic at times, which will become all but apparent soon enough. But overall, we got along most of the time. First thing I should mention is that we were all new to D&D at the time. Apart from the fighter, none of us had ever played before, including the DM. This being our first time playing, we all miss a bunch of huge red flags about the campaign. First off, before we started the session, she told us not to make our own characters, as she had already written them. Alright, we thought, most of us don't even know how to build a character. She must have done this to avoid a lot of confusion at the first session. Oh, how wrong we were. We all arrive at the session and she hands us blank character sheets. We all kinda just look at each other, confused, and asked her if she had given us the right sheet. She proudly states, "Duh, those are all the correct character sheets because you all have amnesia." She wanted us to figure out everything that was meant to be on our character sheet on the fly. Class, health, stats, spells, and equipment. Heck, we didn't even know what race we were. In order to figure that out, we had to roll a perception check, and we rolled low. So for the entirety of the first session, we had no idea what we were, who we were, or what we were meant to do. All we knew was that one of us had 4 legs, one of us had no legs, one of us had fur, and the last of us had scales. But despite our low rolls, we did know one thing. My character had huge breasts. Yeah, it was kind of an open secret that the DM was bi. And that's all well and good, but she tried to fetishize anything related to big-chested women and gay men, which did annoy me and Warlock, constantly asking who was on top and bottom, etc., etc. But we thought nothing of it at the time. Role-playing a female character seemed interesting at the time, and I wanted to see where it would go. Hey, don't go knocking the DM. Boobage is a vital piece of character creation. Oh. Okay, for real though, what a creep. Now, perversions aside, the whole "you have amnesia" idea is actually kinda speaking to me. As a player, I think it'd be really fun to just throw yourself at the world and see what exactly you're good at. I'm imagining a character taking a big axe swing at an orc chief, only to find out that they're playing a wizard and their attack does fuck all. Or the opposite, where a character tries to cast Shatter on a door, only for their rippling pecs and delts to shatter the door to pieces. Maybe for like a one-shot or something. This idea could work, but the gimmick is exactly that. A gimmick. It's tempting as a DM to make drastic changes to gameplay for the sake of shaking things up. But it's gonna take some serious planning for things to go the way you want them to go. The whole reason that players spend so much time creating their characters is because they want to play as, shocking twist here, those characters. I'ma be real here, it's a bit of a rite of passage as a DM to do a sort of body swap episode, where you have each of the players exchange character sheets and play as each other's characters. But that sort of thing is really only gonna be good for maybe one session, or maybe two if you run out of time. The reason why these novel ideas call out to us is just that. They're novel. But once that novelty is worn off, what's left? Nothing but a bunch of players who wish they were playing a regular game of D&D. Gimmicks are fun, but use them sparingly, and for the love of God, don't make cup size a defining character trait. So the entirety of the first session was spent surviving on an island we woke up on. At a certain point, we decided to send half the party to make camp and the other half to find food. I know, dumb idea to split the party, but we didn't know any better. See, me and Fighter built camp, and Paladin and Warlock went hunting. This is really when the poop show started to rear its ugly head. At a certain point, Paladin and Warlock stumbled upon a wild boar, and decided to make that dinner. And honestly, a lot was purely due to bad rolls. But they were losing hard. After 15 minutes of trying to hit this thing with weapons we didn't understand how to use, the DM stands up and angrily says, "You guys are freaking level 4! How are you losing to a boar?" Fighter, who has played before, shot his eyes open in surprise. The rest of us had no idea how bad this was for us. Not only do we not know how anything works, we all already have our subclasses, feats, etc., and had no idea what any of them are or how they work. Not to mention that 75% of the people at the table were spellcasters who didn't know that they can cast spells. It was just a bad show all around. After another few minutes, the boar is dead and they return to the rest of us who have made camp. And that's where the first session ended. Next week rolls around and we all took some time to learn more of the rules and realized that we should probably at least know our stats, so we can properly know what modifiers to add to our weapons and ability checks. So we asked the DM, to which she promptly said, "No, it will break the immersion of my story." Great. Apart from the fact that we couldn't honestly know what we rolled, the session was going overall pretty well, until near the end, where we were walking through a pathway in the forest when we were suddenly attacked by 2 Medusas. Fighter's eyes shot open again. "Seriously?" he asked. "Yeah, but don't worry," the DM stated. "You'll be fine." So the fight starts, and we are getting creamed. Surprisingly, we dodged the petrifying gazes long enough to get some hits in. But due to there being 3 spellcasters not casting spells, we weren't doing much damage. At some point, the DM noticed and was starting to get frustrated with us. "Why aren't you doing anything?" the DM asked. "What do you mean? We're attacking the best we can." "You all are level 4. You can obviously deal more damage than just hitting them wildly." It was at this point that I noticed that the fighter was starting to get annoyed. "Yeah, no crap, but we don't know what we can do. So how do we do anything other than that?" The DM started getting really mad as well. "It would just break the immersion if I told you." After a few minutes of arguing between these two, she finally goes, "Fine. You know what? A meteor falls on top of one of the Medusas. There, are you happy?" We are kind of at a loss for words. We tried to calm them down and eventually got them to settle. The game continued and we managed to kill the Medusa. Luck was on our side, I guess. Afterwards, we stopped to try and lick our wounds. Before we got the chance to take a short rest, we were immediately attacked by a Merilith. A freaking Merilith! Suffice it to say, we got knocked down before the end of the initiative, and we wake up in a cell with a couple of guards watching us. Session 2 ends. So at this point, the DM, while not being a good DM, hasn't done anything super red flaggy up until this point. But oh boy, this is where the story goes from bad to worse. The session starts and we're in prison. We're slowly getting our bearings and try talking to the guards. No response. So I try to persuade them to let us out. I still don't know that I'm a bard. Natural 20. The DM looks at me and sneers. She describes, "Despite your attempts to speak to the guards, they ignore you. You become so frustrated that you flash your boobies at them in an attempt to seduce them." What? I asked before being interrupted. "Before anyone can react, you feel a smack on your face as the only female guard stares at you angrily. She then begins chastising me, in character, about being a slut. I'm in complete shock. "I just wanted to talk to them," I protested. "Well, you already flashed them, can't go back now." She continues to yell at me and at some point goes, "Wait, Valis?" Yeah, turns out this NPC was an old ally of our group and slowly became the bane of our campaign. After 2 full sessions, we finally were handed our proper character sheets, and finally figured out exactly how stupid we must have looked during our fights. We learned that we were mercenaries of sorts for an empire that we never got to see. The campaign fell apart before we could. The NPC immediately joined our group and became that kind of DMPC. She was a beautiful blood hunter dark elf that everyone else just throws themselves over, aka the DM's Mary Sue. And boy, was it just as much fun as it sounds. Every interaction from this point on turns into the DMPC talking to the NPCs by herself and pushing us out of every social interaction. After about an hour of this happening, we slowly started to check out. And the more we do, the angrier the DM gets. At a certain point, we have to head into a cave for some reason that I honestly can't remember. After a bit of walking through an empty cavern, she says, "Before you realize what's going on, 3 4-headed hydras start to approach and attack." The fighter shoots up and shouts, "Wait, what? Are you trying to kill us?" "Well," the DM explains, "if you had been paying attention, you would have noticed them, and you could have snuck around them. But since you weren't, it's a fight." "Nah," Warlock pipes up. "That's pretty bullshit." "Yeah, there's no way we wouldn't have noticed 3 giant hydras in the middle of an empty cavern." After a couple of minutes of intense arguing, I asked the Warlock to take me home, as I didn't want to just sit there and argue, and we decided to leave. After that night, I didn't have another session with that DM due to some stuff in my personal life, but I did invite some of the other players to join a campaign that I started DMing, and we have been playing happily ever since. TLDR, DM gives us the bare minimum for a campaign and gets mad at us for being confused and not having fun. End of story. It's one of the worst feelings in the world when you're a player and you get trapped in a D&D game that your DM tries to turn into a movie. See, the DM thinks they're weaving a tale on par with Lord of the Rings, but in reality it's got the same enjoyment factor as The Amazing Bulk or Fred the movie. Yeah, you all remember when Nickelodeon made that f***ing thing? If the universe were merciful, it would have just hit us with a meteor right then and there, but I digress. The whole lashing out at your players for not having fun thing is such an insane feat of mental gymnastics that the DM here should get a gold medal. If it's abundantly obvious that the fun is drained from your game, then who really is to blame here? Look, it's perfectly acceptable and frankly normal to be a bad DM, because nobody starts being good at stuff just out of nowhere. What is not okay is having such an ego that you can't even fathom that you're a bad DM. I read somewhere that people who think that they're the smartest end up being the dumbest, and the people who think they are the dumbest end up being the smartest. Because the people who think that they're dumb know that they have room to learn, and are constantly expanding their knowledge, while the people who think they're smart refuse to be taught anything. Now, I don't know if that's true or not, but if it is, this story could be a classic case study. Now on that note, let's take a look at this week's Gallery of the Drake. This week's fan art comes from viewer Frostfire0 and depicts the Drake's wrath unleashed. With the success of the channel, Drake quickly learned that fame is not all it's cracked up to be.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? I'm Sean Evans, and you're watching Hot Ones. It's a show with hot questions and even hotter wings. Today, we are joined by niche internet micro-celebrity Den of the Drake.
Hey, Sean, it's great to—
Shut up. Shut the up. Put this in your mouth.
Bruh, I'm a red dragon. There isn't a wing spicy enough.
You know, Drake, I'm a bit of a Steven Universe fan. Do you remember what you said about it last year? That it's just My Little Pony, but with lesbians instead of horses? How's that wing tasting, by the way, Drake?
Are you trying to kill me, Sean?
Who isn't?
Thank you again, Frostfire0, for submitting your art. If you'd like to see your fan art featured in Gallery of the Drake, be sure to send it to the email in my About section. Fan art is my favorite part of doing YouTube, and it means the world to me that I can inspire artists like you to create artwork like this. With the story over and artwork displayed, we're gonna go ahead and wrap up. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And if you feel like supporting the channel further, my Patreon and merchandise links are in the description. I would like to thank you all for listening, and I hope to see you next time in the Den of the Drake.